thanks everybody for coming. Really appreciate that. These pictures, some of them I don't have a whole lot of context for them. Some of them are just cool pictures of town that I found, and just they look a little better in color. It's a little easier to imagine them as they were when you see some of these pictures restored. The color turned out better on some than others. Some of them, the color didn't work very well, but still good shots of town to give you an idea of how things were. Most of these are around the early 20th century, so about 100 years old. I also wanted to take a minute to remember Terry Altide and Tim Eisenman. They did a lot of local history research, and they passed a lot of information on to me, and I'm very, very grateful to have been able to know these guys. And I also wouldn't be able to do this today were it not for my mom, who got me this computer when my old one crashed. So thank you very much, Mom. First one is the Keokuk Riverfront. I think this is around 1900. You can see the planks there that would lead up to the steamboat, so they could offload cargo and stuff. Today, you can see the Verity Museum and the picnic shelter there. The Union Depot is just barely there in the background behind the trees. This is the General Mills building that was on Water Street on Main Water Street in Maine. It was there, built in the 80s, and was Purity Oats in 1909, and in the 40s, General Mills bought it and opened it, or operated it until 1963, when it was torn down. I also like that you can see the stone wall there that ran across a lot of the riverfront. And today you can see the United Presbyterian Church is where, or the lot in front of it is where it sat there. And let me know if I'm going too quick for anybody, if anybody wants to see any of these pictures longer or wants me to back up. This is Main Street Hill in the mid-70s before the bridge was built. You can see the Irwin Phillips Company building there on 2nd Main, excuse me. I didn't take a picture today, but I thought that turned out pretty well. This is Hotel Iowa. It was built in 1912 and 13. It was built by a big group of businessmen in Keokuk got together and formed the Hotel Iowa Company to construct it. And it operated until the 40s as Hotel Iowa, when it was bought and changed to the Eppers Hotel. And the Eppers Hotel ran into the 80s, where and the building sat until early 2000s, when it was renovated for income-based housing. And today
It was the Pierce building after Eppers.
Oh yes, it was, right.
Yeah, the Pierce brothers.
But today it looks essentially the same as it did then.
So was the picture on the bottom black and white, and you colored it?
Yeah. These were all the pictures were originally black and white. The older pictures here. So yeah, I think the older picture here, I would say about 1935, based on the cars. Yeah, you can see the Texaco gas station there on the opposite corner, where the hotel is today. And two of Hotel Iowa's neighbors are still standing there. There's some gaps in between them now, but look essentially how they did. These houses, I don't know a whole lot about the house on the right. The house on the left was owned by a banker here in town, and it was destroyed in a fire, and both the banker and his wife died in that fire. And today there's a new house. I read somewhere that that's the fourth house that's been at that lot there. But the house on the right essentially looks unchanged, other than the guardrail along the balcony there. Very, very close. You can see the trees got a little bigger, but other than that, very similar to how it was. This is 4th and Franklin Streets. I really don't have any information about the houses around or anything, but you can see the original curbstones along the road there. A lot of those are actually still there, which I think is kind of cool. But today the neighborhood doesn't look changed very much either. There's big house on the corner's gone, but other than that, it's essentially the same neighborhood as it has been. This is the Keokuk Opera House. It was destroyed by a fire in 1923, but it was built in 1880, and it had a seating capacity of 1,000 people. It was a very big building. It was renamed to the Grand Theater in 1914. It changed ownerships and was completely renovated, and burned in 1923. It was replaced by today's Grand Theater that you see there. This is Kenny's shoes. The color didn't turn out quite as well as I would have liked it to here, but this building was built in the 20s after the demolition of the Hotel Estes. Kenny's Shoes opened in 1929 and operated there until 1959, and today that's where Estes Park is. This is also the corner of 5th and Main. You see Keokuk Gas Service, the Iowa Hotel, and Younger's Shoes in the background there. A couple of the two corner buildings are still there today as the Keokuk Hamilton Dam Museum. And what I like is you can still see there's a Younger's Shoes in both pictures there. They've held on, so I think that's pretty neat there. It's an advertisement for Irwin Phillips Company and their big damn overalls. I think that I think this picture is from around 1930. I didn't find an exact date on it, but you can see the guy to the right of the big damn overall sign. He's in a fireman's uniform. I really don't have much information outside of that, but today that is right underneath the bridge there, the corner of 1st and Main. This is 4th and Main Street in what I would assume is the 40s. And in a snowstorm, I really don't, you can see the marquee on the Iowa Theater says that there was a Clark Gable movie there at the time, so it's been a little while. You can see today. Several of the buildings are still there on the right. It is 4th and Main. This picture, when I was transitioning my computers, I lost the information that I had written down about this picture, but my understanding is this was one of the first photos that was taken of a person in Keokuk. So, you can see there the railroad bridge in the background. That's not the one that's there now. It didn't have a road surface on it. It was replaced in the 1880s, I believe, with the older bridge that's there today. And you can see that there with the swing band open.
It looks like just a cake. A wedding cake.
You can't see the caption here. This is a building at 419 Bank Street. It was built in 1891 for the Hubinger Brothers Company. And they operated their factory there until they built their new facility at 5th and A Street in 1903. And that is what it looks like today. Benner Supermarket. It was opened in the late 50s, and they were there for about 20 years into the 70s. Benner Grocery started in Burlington, Iowa. They opened this building about 10 years after they started. But Benner Grocery was bought by a larger company and changed to Benner Tea Company, which is still, their products are available at Aldi's if you ever had Benner Tea that originated in Burlington. They operated Keokuk.
Where is this?
The Benner Grocery today, it's the
On the
Great River
farms?
Players.
Oh, no. Really?
Yeah, it's GRB.
My dad said that it used to be over here. There was a bowling alley.
Yeah, there's a bowling alley there and physician's office. And, yeah, it's been a lot of things.
And skating in the basement.
This is one of the only pictures I could find of Old Joyce Park. I know they just had a presentation here not too long ago about the baseball here in town. This was a minor league park. It was built in 1920, demolished in 1964, and today it is where Ivy is.
There's the.
Well, the spot where home plate was is still marked there. It's off towards Main Street on the main drive in.
Really?
If you look for it.
employee parking lot.
I did not know that. I'll have to check that
Wait,
out.
give it. Say that again. I'm trying to orient myself.
From that picture to the left on the main drive out to Main Street where the light is,
Okay.
in sort of in the curb, there's an indentation there, and there's the home plate is, or a home plate is still there
Interesting.
next to the.
I know everybody's
from
gonna be
there.
out there later, not getting groceries, but looking for a home plate. We'll just have an impromptu organizational meeting.
While I was reading about this park, I also read that home plate for a very brief period had a hidden microphone installed underneath it that could pick up a radius of 17 feet, and that the idea was to give radio listeners an inside look at the game. That was canceled very quickly due to profanity of the This is Rampart Hill. I think around the turn of the century, maybe 1890, 1900. It was there was several sets of staircases around town that would take you down to the riverfront, and this is where one of them was. You can just barely see the train tracks and telegraph wires down along the water's edge. Today there's a retention. Wall. I think they had some problems with some erosion. I think was part of the reason for today's state.
If you look on Google Earth over the last however long Google Earth has been a thing, you can actually see some of the progression from the colorization at the top to the bottom. Like you can, I mean, it's crazy. It looks really similar to how you've got them already. They've got it colorized and not. You can definitely see the erosion.
So was that picture taken before the dam was built or after the dam was built? Because the water level would be substantially different.
You know, I think this is after, I would say.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure on that.
Because the railroad would have been moved and all that kind of thing too. So.
Right, yeah. And I believe there was a lumber yard before the dam. There was a lumber yard somewhere in that area. I'm not sure exactly where. It's underwater now.
There was an electric plant. They made electricity.
Oh, okay.
Coventry had an electric plant. Plus, they also had a farm implements manufacturer on the river.
Oh, okay.
But the stairs were made by the WPA, so that's after the dam was built.
This is Schoten's Bakery. It says there from a postcard dated 1910. I can't tell you a whole lot about this business. I couldn't find really any mention of Schoten's Bakery.
Scout.
Scout, thank you.
I thought it was shouting. I've heard it pronounced a lot of different ways, but
Sure.
But yeah, I could not find very much information about this business itself. That's a very prominent Keokuk name. I found all sorts of people with that last name, but nothing about this business in particular.
I
But
think-
the building.
I think one of the bakers at that one ended up working with the one that came after this one, and then they opened stands.
Oh.
So it kind of progressed from scouting, shouting, you can tell I'm not native anymore. But then the bakers kind of handed it down, and so now it stands, which is not in that location, but kind of kept the name, kept the family together.
Today, though, the building still looks really well. I actually took this picture the day before they took out the second story windows there. They just put brand new little windows in that building, so that's pretty exciting, but it's still in very good condition. I think that's a good building. This is 5th and Main Street. The color didn't turn out in this picture. Very, very, very disappointed in that, but I wanted to include it anyway just to give people an idea of the size of Hotel Estes here and how big it was. It was converted into a hospital for the Civil War. Was there until about 1920. In this picture, you can also see the Keokuk Savings Bank on the right-hand side of the street. The old building that was demolished to build what's there now after Keokuk Savings and Keokuk National merged in the 20s. I also think it's cool you can see the telegraph wires that
The
run.
poles that are all in the front of the building.
Right, yes, lots of business conducted here and a lot of telegraphs to communicate that business. And you can also see
Probably electric lines.
So what street corner is that?
this is 5th and
Fifth and Main.
and this is what it looks like today. You can see Estes Park there in the new, what is now City Hall, was Keokuk
Keokuk
National,
Savings.
or Keokuk Savings. The color on this one turned out really well. This is the Iowa Theater. It was built in 1912. Built in 1912, and it was called the Hippodrome Theater. They remodeled it in 1922, and a few years after the remodel, it was renamed the Iowa Theater, and it was destroyed in a fire in 1975. And I do have a few pictures along the bottom of the fire, and the Youngren's building that's there today in its footprint. This is our original library. It was built in 1882. And you can see the General Curtis statue that sat in the middle of the intersection of 3rd and Main. The new library was built in 1962 that replaced it. And today you can see that is the where the mall sign is and where they have the farmers market every Saturday morning.
I love the sign that said library at the top. It's clipped off on that one, but on the other one, yeah, it says library at the top.
Well, the library was only on the second floor.
I know, it just library.
The first floor was all commercial. Big chunk of stone. Curtis said.
It's a very, very impressive statue. That was
the
the
diamond line. Oh, sorry.
that was the last modern picture that I've taken for comparison. The rest of these that I have here, again, some I have context for, some I don't. I don't have much context for this picture other than guessing it's around the turn of the century. And we're at the foot of Main Street Hill there. You can see hotels and just the very corner of your own Phillips building up on the hill in the background there.
Erwin Phillips was on the other side of the building, of the street.
I thought they had a building on both sides of the street. Oh.
No. See, that's the Diamond Joe line. They carried freight on the boats. They went up and down the river.
Okay. Thanks for the context.
But you also see the building to the right of the City Hotel. It's got the 4 windows. That's one of the original Rat Row buildings.
Really?
Mm-hmm. We smushed a lot of those down.
This is a parade in town, and I can't tell you what holiday or what was being celebrated. but I believe this is on the roof of the Keokuk Savings Bank there. Don't have a lot of context outside of that, but just that it's a fairly old photo, and I think the color turned out okay for the condition that the original's in, so I thought that I would include that.
This would have been one of the street fairs.
Yeah, do you see the little
Because-
tightrope walker on the top?
Yeah, see the tightrope walker?
If you look really close, you can see him.
He went from one side of Maine to the other. And the stores or the businesses had those little tents along the sidewalk to advertise, you know, what they had in their
Yeah,
store.
I see that.
But anyway, lots of those fit. And then you can see the clock tower.
I would say, is that above Yonkers? And then would that be Estes on the far left side?
No. No, this would have been between, you know what,
Says drugs there.
Fifth and Sixth. You'd have to really look on the left-hand side.
That's what I was thinking, that it was,
And that says
that's in between Fifth and Sixth.
Yeah,
Well, there was a pharmacy in the Estes building for.
McGrath Drugs. They were in big family in town.
Can you write me
So
some?
was Diamond. Diamond's lived for a long time. He's got his own Diamond Joe hauling. Anyway. They have warehouses, that's what he was. This fascinates me, this.
So this is October 1st, 1907. The busy day at the Keokuk riverfront, because that steamboat there is carrying President Teddy Roosevelt.
Yay.
He came and gave a speech in front of the General Curtis statue on 3rd and Main, which is available. You can find that speech in the Library of Congress. It's a very interesting read. It was very much a big to-do event when the President came to town. This was one of 3 trips that he made to Keokuk. I'm thinking this is around the 50s. This is a Burlington route
Looks like.
locomotive in front of the Union Depot there. And in the same vein, I found that this is a little pixelated, but this is the Burlington Zephyr that serviced Keokuk for many, many years. You can see the paddle boat in the background. This is, I believe, the first Christmas after completion of our new mall there in 1963. Or I'm sorry, I'm wrong. 1968 is when they finished the mall there. But the Christmas tree, I always liked how they decorated Main Street. I always thought that the city does a really good job with that. It's a very good year for that. This is Sheller Globe, today Hennages, the original factory. I couldn't tell you when this is. The 70s, I would say, again, based on the cars in the parking lot.
Just read their license plate.
This is again 5th and Main Street, and the smoke cloud that you see in the background is Keokuk Laundry Service that was on 12th and Johnson Street, burned in. I had it written down. I don't have the year written down. I think this is the mid-60s, I believe. And I had more pictures of the fire itself and the building before. I could not find those in time for this presentation. But, also a good shot of Main Street. Regardless, you see the old city bus there.
Right, here, savings, what does it say on the banner? Something
Free
festival.
Fall Festival?
Free fall?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
September
They must have had a
19th.
bus. There's a bus, isn't there?
There's a person on the back of the bus.
And I assumed that was a city bus. I know we did have bus
I
service in
was-
Keokuk for.
But I didn't know we had.
Somebody
There's what?
Somebody get knocked with a
Yes.
Well, so they arrived alive. Okay.
Again, if you can't see the caption, this is 29 South 3rd Street, day of the urban renewal fire in 1964. Upper story was gutted, and most of the windows are broken out by the heat. This is a huge fire that destroyed several square blocks of Keokuk and eventually paved the way for the demolition of much of downtown for the mall and hotel across the street. There's another picture from that fire. You can see the X there on the right hand side. I believe that is the same building, the Frontier there on 3rd and Main.
Well, that's the library standing there on the left.
Or right, so that would be 3rd
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Johnson.
that'd be good,
Johnson.
yeah.
And this is my last picture that I have, but this is downtown Keokuk, I think in 1959. So this is just a few years before the urban renewal fire. You can see the Hotel Iowa in the bottom left-hand corner, and the Baker building is one block to the right there. But this just gives you an idea of how dense the commercial district of Keokuk was
Right.
prior to that fire. And
A lot of buildings went down.
yes, a lot of buildings, a lot of commerce and business. And, today, much of that is gone.
Yeah, the Irwin Phillips is that big red brick on the right.
Right, yeah,
Inside
right,
Main.
right on the top of Main Street Hill there.
Yeah.
And you can see the General Mills factory is still there in this picture. Also the Verity Museum. I can't tell there. I think that at this time the Verity was still floating. I don't think
They
that
tried out.
it's, yeah.
What would have been in that big open spot? It'd be like 2nd Johnson.
You know, I wondered that before. I'm not sure, but the building on that empty lot there, right on 4th and Johnson there, that building on the left-hand side of the street, those are those arched buildings. And there's one that's still standing on in between 4th and 5th on Johnson Street. But I think arched buildings like that, I think at one time covered that whole block. I'm not sure. I've seen a few other pictures, aerial pictures of downtown during this time.
Is there any history of what started the fire or?
That is subject to a lot of speculation. But
The guys that owned the land.
it was. My understanding is the official report was there was a discarded match on the roof of a bakery in the 300 block of Main Street, and that roof fire was windswept and quickly consumed the several blocks around. During this fire, it took almost a whole day to put out, and fire departments from all over responded. Fort Madison, Montrose, Donaldson, Nauvoo, Hamilton, everybody came to aid. Yeah.
Look at all the cars parked on Main Street diagonal. Lots of
Yeah,
cars.
that was terrible.
Oh, and you can see the, not Estes House, help me, Urban,
The
the hotel.
Oh,
The
The
what?
hotel down on 1st and Johnson,
First and Johnson?
oh yeah.
where we did the betrayal at the brothel dinner,
Murder?
murder mystery dinner.
Oh, you mean that was the brothel?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I thought you said it was a hotel.
Well, it was.
Well, not exactly.
Well, in its earliest days, it was a hotel, and yeah.
Catty corner from that building, you can see the cellar here. This is it was a boarding house at that time.
Yeah, it was another hotel. There was a lot of those close to the river.
Yes, there were. I read an article in the Daily Gate, I think in the 1880s. There was a group of Keokuk mothers concerned that to walk their children to the library on 3rd and Main, they had to pass by several houses of ill fame, and the mothers of Keokuk were not very impressed with that, that fact.
I guess. So you're supposed to tell the story then, Angela, about how you go to the library and look through the windows into the ladies'
Oh, yeah,
of the
yeah,
evenings.
you definitely could.
doings at the.
I
across
feel like
the
I should
alley.
get out a pointer, there's a bunch of
Yeah.
different stuff I can mention.
That's it, right, the building right to the right of the library was a brothel.
I'll see if I can climb
And
up
so,
here.
if you were on the second
Yeah.
floor, and I can
This
testify
is
to
the
that.
library right here, and the children's area would have been these windows at the back, and this house right here was,
With the House of Elder Freers.
you know,
And they
One of
have
those
big
places.
windows.
yeah,
So
so
it
you
was
could, so you
peekable.
could look over the alleyway here and just see whatever you wanted to. But this house right here is the one I was talking about where we had that, murder mystery dinner
Yeah.
from a few years ago.
And behind the brothel was a zoo. Was a little zoo that was called the Grand Zoo. And so you could see ladies doing things, or you could see animals doing things. Whichever was of interest to you. Anyway, well, thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you everybody very much for.
Again, we thank David so much for doing these photos for us. I know he's got some others that he's been working on, so we were talking about maybe doing a part 2 in the future or something, which, you know, would be absolutely fabulous. It's one thing to see history in black and white, but seeing it in color is really, really cool. So, thank you, David.